You're listening to Code Red with Secure America Now, the largest national security grassroots army.
Welcome to this very special Code Red podcast brought to you by Secure America Now. My name is Alan Roth. I am president of Secure America Now. We have with us today three patriots. These are people who during the pandemic, while the rest of us have had a time out, these folks actually don't have any time out. They protect us by protecting our borders. We will have a conversation with them, and I will introduce them very quickly, and they will then take it away in the sense of giving us some more background of what is it that they do on a daily basis. We have Patricia Kramer, John Monahan, and Vincent Salgado. So Patricia, let's start with you. Where are you, and what do you do professionally?
Well, first, Alan, I just wanted to thank you for having us on the show. I live in Arizona. I live in Green Valley, Arizona, which is about 40 miles from Nogales. I work at the Nogales Port of Entry. I have been a CVP officer for 15 years, and I've been doing union for 4 years. So I represent all the U.S. Customs officers and agriculture specialists in Arizona.
And I just want, so that people who don't know the language, you work for the United States Customs and Border Protection, which is part of the Department of Homeland Security. Is that correct?
Correct, Alan. We work at the ports of entry. So anytime you're going in and out of the United States, we're the people that you show your passport to, that we check, if you have anything to declare, we check that. We deal with trade. And to differentiate ourselves from Border Patrol, we're at the ports of entry, and Border Patrol secures in between the ports of entry.
Okay. Thank you. Vincent, can you describe your professional activities and your location?
Sure. So good morning, Alan. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to be on your show as well. Currently in between two ports of entry. So I'm the chapter president for NTU Chapter 123, representing CBP employees out of Calexico, well, Imperial Valley as a whole, but out of Calexico ports of entry and the Andrade port of entry. I'm actually in between ports, parked on the side of the road right now as I speak to you guys. But as you are aware, and as Ms. Kramer has also mentioned as well, we're living through this pandemic at the face of it, working the front lines, having, as you mentioned, having to go to work rather than stay home and self-isolate. And we're seeing this on a day-to-day basis. There is no self-isolation for the front line. There's no way the frontline employees at the ports of entry or at a medical facility can perform their functions at a home. So that's why we got to maintain our frontline positions and go to work.
Well, I'm going to ask you a few questions about how the pandemic, in fact, has changed what you do. And we have some questions from viewers, which also address that particular part of your experience, of your daily experiences. John, can you also share with us your location and what is it that you do?
Well, good morning to everyone. Good morning to you, Alan. Thank you for letting us join. My name is John Monahan. I've been with Customs and Border Protection for just about 18 years. And I've been the chapter president for Chapter 143 in El Paso for about 6 years. I represent the entire southwest border from Columbus, New Mexico to Presidio, Texas. Just as Pat and Vincent said, what we do every day is we provide protection for the country at the front line on the border. We screen everyone coming in and out of the United States.
So with the pandemic dominating or our lives, all the media. How has your job changed because of the pandemic? Has it changed? And also, do you do anything special in terms of screening when people are coming into the country? Do you ask them questions? How does that work? Patricia, do you want to start the ball rolling?
Sure. Alan, our jobs have changed, and we had a challenging job to begin with, and we're more than happy to do it. That's the oath that we took. Right now, there is no screening of people coming in, and unlike the northern border and the airports, the traffic on the southern border has not ceased. The one thing that they were able to change, and this is with us, me, John, Vincent, and the rest of the chapter presidents fighting, is getting the agency to stop having just a non-essential travel with Mexican nationals coming in, because they were allowing that at the beginning. Well, after a fight, they put a stop to it. But now you have a lot of U.S. citizens and LPRs, which is green card holders, coming in and out of the country. If you guys were to come to the to the southern border, you would never think there was a pandemic going on. You wouldn't think. And it's people going to Mexico to get haircuts, food, vet appointments, nail appointments. So it's made our job a lot more challenging because, we understand that we took an oath to protect our country and we will continue to do so. But our own agency isn't doing enough to protect the front line, the officers at the ports of entry, in order for us to keep securing our country.
Vincent, if you were in Washington, D.C., and you can make policy, you can make changes, given, again, the pandemic, but also more generally, what changes or what powers could be bestowed upon you that, as a frontline patriot protecting our borders, what is it that you would like to see the government do?
In answering that question, I am and acting in that role, as you explained, stricter rules or regulations for those for the international crossings. As Ms. Kramer was also mentioning, the restrictions not only just coming into the United States, but stopping that flow going outside of the United States, which is part of the problem for the pandemic. If you think about it, the United States citizens, the legal residents leaving the United States, going to a foreign country, they're going to come back from that foreign country and possibly have been exposed to COVID-19 out in in our case, Mexico, and then bringing that back. So stricter regulations and rules applied across the board for all ports of entry, both northern, southern, airports, seaports as well. I would also see what I could do to apply stricter or better policies and protections for the frontline employees that are working at this with this pandemic and having to see it face to face.
John, do you want to take a crack at this particular question as to what you would like to see the government do that would make you more effective on the front lines?
Yes, sir. I'll take a crack at it. My personal belief, this is a very personal opinion, okay? But my very personal belief is that we need to shut down the border. Not for commercial goods, but for pedestrian use. There is no need for any U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident to be living in Mexico like they are. If they want to hole up there for a couple of months or whatever, that's fine. But if we don't shut down the border, we're never going to stop this because people keep going back and forth. And what do they do? Affect our officers. Our officers go out and affect the rest of the economy, and it just keeps going.
Yeah. And I second what John is saying, Alan. Under a national emergency, we can stop people exiting the country for non-essential travel. And for some reason, it hasn't been done. And we can stop a lot of people from going into Mexico. Because if you guys see what's going on in Mexico, their cases are blowing up with the COVID-19.
What do you mean by that?
Well, just to give you an example, one of my ports is in San Luis, Arizona, which is by Yuma. And they border a town called San Luis Rio Colorado. Their cases have gotten so bad, Alan, that they had to close their general hospital last week because most of their nurses and doctors were infected with the COVID-19. Right? They're almost. It's a small town. They've jumped from, I mean, every day it's like 10 new cases, and the officers there are being exposed to all of this. They still have a 3-hour wait at this port, for people coming in. And like Vincent said, there's no way of knowing where they've been or if they were exposed to this. But Mexico, obviously we can't trust what they're saying and the numbers that they're giving. Whatever numbers they're giving, you should probably like double them. And like John said, we need to close the border and only have trade coming in, and the workers that work are part of the trade, are part of the economy, allow them in. But 90% of these travelers right now is non-essential. They go to family gatherings, to see family in Mexico, and the agency, DHS, is allowing this to happen. And like John said, we're never going to heal from this with all this reckless travel.
I think that you've already answered this question, but it does come from one of our listeners. Are you stopping people with the virus?
I know that recently there was someone that came through that had it, and so they were U.S. citizens, so we can't deny them entry. But that was kind of rare to even know that person had it. I think that we're coming across a lot of people that have it. We just don't know it.
How did you know that person had it?
Well, there's some operational stuff that, of course, we can't speak about, but I guess she had crossed before, and, I think she stated it. But there's certain procedures that we take in order to identify people when, they're coming in and out on certain things. And so, she came through and she had it, and, the officers decontaminated the area. But the officer that came in contact with her, you would think that she would he or she would be quarantined for 14 days. And I mean, at this point, honestly, the agency is treating us like cannon fodder, that it's like we're expendable. And we're not, Alan. I mean, we just can't be replaced that easily. Me, John, and Vincent has taken us years to be the trained officers that we are. So we're not screening people. We're not taking their temperature. We're not even asking them if they think they have it. I mean, it's just business as usual on the southern border.
Vincent, were you given any special training because of the coronavirus, things that you should do, how to protect yourself? I know that we're receiving a great deal of information. Just turn on the television set. But were you given, as a frontline worker, and as Patricia, what she's saying, to me, it's completely unconscionable that you folks are put in harm's way by doing your job, and that we don't do everything that we possibly can to defend you. But were you given any briefings or training in this unique situation of how to do your job?
So briefings were provided to all employees equally, and obviously as a union leader here, we advocate for that type of messaging to consistently go out, and not just once, not twice, but daily if possible, just as a daily reminder to the employees. And obviously when this pandemic first hit home, I mean, employees were kind of like, yeah, this is going to go away, because we had never seen anything like this. In my 13 plus years of working at the port of entry, I've never I've never seen anything where we have had to operate in such a manner. So yes, as a chapter leader, we're constantly communicating with our managers to make sure that those briefings are constantly provided. Those briefings that are provided are mostly based on the CDC guidelines available online. And we're constantly trying to push management to actually provide more for the officers and the employees as a whole, to have them understand what's going on, number one, what they can do to protect themselves and others, and make sure they're not taking something home to their families.
John, one of our viewers, Andrew, asked the question, what role does the military and National Guard play in your job?
At our port, we do have, I don't know the number exactly of National Guard members assigned to us, but to be honest, because of the authorities, they don't have our authorities to search or seize or anything. So they're not allowed to perform inspectional duties. What they normally do is they help us in the cargo environment to do inspections of the cargo and things like that. But they're not allowed to do our job per se.
Do you, looking at the big picture, candidate Trump in 2016 was the first candidate in many, many years to run on a secure our border platform. Have you seen changes both in attitude and practically on how we, as the United States of America, in this case, Trump administration, actually dealing with securing our borders? Has it been is it better? Is it worse? Is nothing happening? Vincent, do you want to start?
Sure. Is it different? Was your first part of your one of your statements you just mentioned? Is it different? Yes, there is. It is different. I think there still needs to be a fine balance to find, and it needs to be found to be able to allow the officers on the front line to be able to enforce the laws, regulations authorized under the law for them. Is enough being done?
Can you
Probably.
explain that? Can you explain? You're not permitted to enforce the law?
No. I mean, I think what I mean by that is I think there could be more more policies in place that would allow the officers to enforce different types of those laws. Not that it's not being enforced. So make sure I clarify that.
Right. Okay. Patricia, do you want to address the overall situation as far as the Trump administration is concerned and protecting the borders?
Oh, I would love to, Alan. This is where you get me fired up. But
you seem so calm.
Yeah. No, I think that, a lot of, and of course, not everybody, but I think most of us, when Mr. Trump decided to run for president, we were excited because for the first time, there was someone that ran on this ticket about securing our borders. And as a officer, I could tell you, Ellen, that for the longest time, I wanted, I wanted someone that's going to make changes because, it's very much needed. In our job, there's so many immigration laws and so many other policies that I think handicap not only just us, but the security of our country. A lot of the laws that the president has tried to implement, I always think it's funny that people say, "Oh, he's creating these laws that and it's just against the immigrant." Most of the laws the president just tried to implement have actually existed for years, Alan. For years they've existed. It's just that we haven't been allowed to apply them. So also, there's certain things that, and just to give you an example, when he tried to say that he'd like to change the fact that if you're born here, you're automatically a citizen. Alan, you have no idea how much that would help the immigration crisis, the immigration issues that we have in this country. That alone really, really makes our job so hard. because you have a lot of people coming in, having their babies here, and that puts a huge strain on our immigration system, on the security of our country. So I applaud the president that he's really the only one that I've ever seen try to make a difference. But, all these federal judges blocking, what he wants to do has been so frustrating. So we've seen little change, but I feel that it's either because the agency doesn't mirror what the president wants for our country. And you have all these federal judges and some lawmakers that block these very important changes that you have no idea how much they would help, our immigration issue, because it is very broken, Alan, very broken. And it's frustrating to see it on the front line.
I can imagine. John, what is your take on this? Has there been a change of attitude? And more so, has there been a change in how you're able to do your job?
Well, I think we've seen some good and some bad. When he first took over and we got that influx was a something that I've never ever seen before. I don't blame it on him. They were trying to come in while he was brand new, but luckily he changed things to where they have to wait down in Mexico before they come back to go to the immigration judges. I do feel though that at work we are allowed to enforce the laws a little bit more than we used to be able to. Under the previous administration, our hands were tied on 90% of what we did. So there's been an improvement.
We at Secure America Now are extremely supportive of giving you the tools for you to do your job as effectively as you possibly can. And we will continue to push in that direction. One of the things that, of course, received tremendous amount of news is, and something that we supported, was the building of a security wall along the border. Do you have any comments on that, John, about the wall, whether it is happening or what the situation is with the wall?
Well, in my neck of the woods, we've always had a wall. When they first constructed the border wall, we've always had it. Although towards our west in New Mexico, there wasn't. But I have seen a lot of construction out there, and I don't see what the big deal is of about a wall anyway. Every country has a border, so I don't know why they make ours such a big deal.
Vincent?
Yeah, well, I was going to actually echo what John mentioned right now. We've always had a wall. We call it a fence at our work line, but a wall has always been there. In the past year, or maybe 2 years now, we've seen that wall in some areas get improved in the sense of becoming taller. I think they added an additional 10 feet to it. But it's mixed emotions when it comes to that fence or that wall. Because there's other mechanisms that the illicit people are using to come across the border, and it's not just through a wall or a fence. It's obviously you can go over, you can go under it, but it's through the ports of entry, and this is where we look for additional staffing to take place. And this is within CBP as a whole. And looking at the OFO side of the house, which is Office of Field Operations, but also the Border Patrol side as well, because that's where your front line is securing the nation, or from the northern side, the southern sides as well. And you can have a wall, but you still need bodies to man that wall, man the ports of entry.
Patricia, would you like to comment on the wall?
Yes, Ellen. I think that, it's not the end all solution, but I think it's part of the solution. To me, to be honest, I think that, one of the best ways, like John said, many countries have walls, and to me, if it would have been up to me, for me, it would have been a very high cement wall. Because, the ones that, like in Nogales, for example, There's videos out there where you see how people scale them, and they scale them like nothing. And so I think that it's part of a solution, but I think it is important, and I think we should have it at the southern border and the northern border, because I'm telling you, Alan, and if you ask the border patrol agents, even what we see through the ports, we see some scary stuff coming through, some scary people coming through. And people think it's not, oh, it's not going to work, or it's going to be useless. I wish that the country, the people that say that, would take a trip down here and see what the kind of people that we catch and we find, that it's not your typical, poor little migrant. Like, some of these are MS-13s, criminals, people that are actually wanted here in the US. So it's I wish the agency did a better job in showing people the examples of what we're catching and the criminals we're catching. So I think the wall is part of the solution for sure.
This leads, I think, very well into a question from Mike H. He says, your jobs look so stressful. How do you deal with it? Thank you for protecting our borders. And by the way, that question or that statement is really reflects, I mentioned we have over 4 million members of our organization, but that really reflects their sentiment, my sentiment. How do you deal with this type of stress on a daily basis? Vincent, you want to take it? Oh,
So
go ahead. Patricia, you're next.
It's okay. So, Alan, in answering that question, how do we deal with the stressful situation? I mean, we as chapter leaders, we communicate with one another, and we kind of de-stress by just talking about our situations with one another, and that's one of the starting points right there. But one of the main factors is trying to leave that stress at work. So the stressful situations happen at work. If we're bringing that home, we're stressing our family out, and they don't need that. They don't need to see that. So it's kind of about stepping back. Obviously communicating with our chapter leaders that we do talk about on a daily basis now, but also making sure that we step back and just maintain that calmness, and to keep that stress at the work site, and rather than keep it at home, and try to deal with whatever stressful matters we have. If there's an issue and we don't want to think about it overnight, if we could take care of it before we leave the work site. It's the reason why us as chapter leaders are working very long hours, to include even working on, we work on our own time most of the time. So we put in more than 40 hours a work week.
Patricia?
Alan, as an officer, I can tell you that the 15 years that I have been, in the service, it is a very stressful job, not just mentally, but physically. So, I'd like to thank that, your member that submitted that question, because I don't think we get asked that question at all. But being an officer is extremely stressful, Alan, and it's hard on our bodies too. Because we have to be on our toes all the time. We have to be on point all the time as we process thousands and thousands of people, and make sure that we're not letting the wrong person in, or that, we're catching as much contraband as possible, that, outbound people exiting the country, that we're catching that illicit currency, guns, ammunition. And on top of that, the trade that we have to process, and within that trade, we see a lot of narcotics as well. So we have to make sure that we are processing legitimate travel, and also on top of that, catching, illicit drugs and money and guns and ammunition, and even illegal immigration through fake documents, through imposters. So we always have to be on our toes, because, God forbid we let the wrong person in, that could cause harm. So we constantly are on our toes. And I could tell you that as a southern border, we pull very, very long shifts sometimes, and it is so difficult on your body, but I think I think we all feel that, we do it because of the oath that we took, of course, because we care about our country. And even the agriculture specialist that we work side to side, you should see how many seizures they have in they protect, our agricultural side, where, we have a lot of pests, a lot of diseases within these plants and fruits and vegetables that could devastate our agriculture economy. And, Alan, just to give you an idea of U.S. Customs, we are the second most revenue producing agency for the government, second to the IRS. On top of, we catch more hard narcotics than any other agency. So it is very stressful. It is very stressful, but we do our job with pride, because we all take our oath very serious.
Well, you do a great job. John, can you share with us your thoughts on the stress that you experience on a daily basis and how you deal with it?
Well, as an officer, the stress level was always high. You're always out on the line. You're always on your toes, waiting for the next scenario to come up. And to me, the biggest help was a good support system at home. If you have a good support system, it'll help you through anything, I think. And not only at home, but also at work. Myself and my fellow officers, we would always support each other, not only at work, but off duty. So I think our coming together as a community within the law enforcement ranks, and then the support system at home, that's what you need in order to survive the stress.
Mm-hmm.
As we bring this conversation, which I want to thank you guys for the job that you do, but also for taking time and sharing your insights with our audience. Thank you for carving out some time for us. If you can make any sort of statement to our 4 million members, what would that be, Patricia? What would you like?
Well, one, thank you. I'd like to thank them for their support in securing our border, because we need all the support that we can, Alan. What you see on the news about how we treat people, how, what has supposedly how we treat migrants, that is all false, Alan. We treat everybody humanely. We treat everyone as good as possible. But we're short staffed. We deal with a lot of stress. Again, I go back to the same thing, but we just need to have their support, to continue to have their support, and hopefully they can reach out to their representatives where they live and advocate for more border security, because there's still so many things that need to be done, to support our jobs, because I could sit here all day and tell you guys of all the things that we need in order to secure our border even more. But I will say that, the president is right on about what he's saying about immigration. So regardless of how you feel about him, when it comes to border security, he's right on the money on what he's saying.
I have seen polling that shows that Americans overwhelmingly are in favor of immigration,
Mm-hmm.
but they want it to be legal. There should be a fair process that people can come into the country. That illegal immigration brings all sorts of folks that, frankly, you don't want in your country.
Mm-hmm.
John, if you have an opportunity, which you do, to make a statement that you would like our membership to hear, and we'll go beyond our membership with this. We will promote this session beyond our 4 million. What is it that you would like them to hear?
What I would like them to hear is that on their borders, at their ports of entry, you have some of the finest men and women that I've ever had the honor of serving with. Uh, we try to do our job the best that we can, given our limitations, not only by the laws but also by our agency, and we do it as professionally as possible. Uh, Please don't believe the hype that you hear when you hear about the bad eggs. I'm sure that there are some, but that is the exception, not the rule.
Mm-hmm.
What we do with much pride.
Well, you do a great job. Vincent, do you have a parting message?
Yes. What number one, as Mr. Kramer mentioned as well. Thank you for being a listener and a viewer with Mr. Alan Roth here, allowing us the opportunity to speak and supporting the frontline officers at the ports of entry across the border, the frontline individuals. As John mentioned as well, we got a lot of damn fine, men and women that work out of the ports of entry, and that we represent as chapter leaders. A message to you, though, as the listeners: if you don't have to go leaving across the border, stay home. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason to be crossing the borders internationally. We want to try to advocate for that as much as we can. We're communicating with our members of Congress on this one, and we encourage you to do so as well. We've got to stop this pandemic from spreading further, as we have already started to see it on the front lines at our ports of entry, at other work sites. Anywhere you go, I mean, they've got the guidance that's out there. Some states are in the stay home. California, which is where I'm at, has the stay home order going in effect. Different counties have different provisions. In the county that I live in right now, it's basically that stay home unless you need to go get groceries, or obviously if you're one of the essential employees and you need to go to the work site, then that's what our order is. Us as the frontline members, we thank you for your support. We hope that when you do see us, you thank us in person. But thank you, please, thank you.
You're welcome. And let me tell you that something that we all know, living in a free society, that information, especially with so many people locked down, information is something that Americans are bombarded with every single day. And we invited you here because your side of the story really gets heard in a lot of places, especially I am currently locked down in New York, and let me tell you, the media there is not very friendly, not only to you, but the only guy who beats you is Donald Trump. He can do the greatest thing on earth, and
Mm-hmm.
they will beat the Bojangles out of him. I have an open invitation that I want to give you folks. And that invitation is that if you want to come back and talk to us, we will give you a platform to talk to millions of people. And also beyond that, we on a daily basis educate people that you frontline patriots are just that. I'm not going overboard here with my language. I'm pretty careful with my language. Patricia said it a few times, that we're doing this for our country, and I know all you guys are. And we also are here for our country. And this whole organization, frankly, is a volunteer organization, but we serve a need. I don't get paid by Secure America Now, but yet I have certain talents in marketing, etc., that I give to Secure America Now, and there are hundreds of other people who do so as well. And we see you folks as our first line of defense, whether it's disease, whether it's violent gangs that have done some horrendous things in New York as well as California. Murders of young girls. I mean, it's just horrible. And we have to stop that, but it starts with you folks. So once again, I want to thank you for what you do every single day. While we're locked down, you guys are out there doing your job. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, want to thank you for giving the time for, I know Patricia was the one who was the recruiter. It wasn't too painful here, but in terms of speaking with us, but continue to do what you do. God bless you and God bless America.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Code Red Podcast. Be sure to click subscribe to stay up to date and be the first to hear about our future podcast. You can also find and subscribe to the Code Red Podcast on Podbean, Spotify, Google Play, and YouTube.